Week 2 is in the books, Tyler, and we had a lot happen this week, man. This was a busy week for fantasy football, and if you are a fantasy manager with something happening on your team, whether it's injuries, a player getting benched, changes happening to your team, don't worry, you are not alone. Everybody is going through something, whether you're 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. Chances are you've had something affect your roster because this week was an absolute shit show, Tyler. It was just a lot happening. We had a notable quarterback bench. We had a lot of injuries to teams that were already decimated with injuries, a lot of IR players, man. And I think the first thing we got to acknowledge, man, is that this is fantasy football. And if you had a take at the beginning of the year, it's time to move off the tank and just win your league, man. And injuries is a big part of this, navigating through it, especially with bye weeks coming up in the next 3 weeks, right? We have bye weeks start week 5. And there's a lot of injuries this week, man. Overall, I'm very concerned about just fantasy in general right now because we're going to be going to the waiver wire pretty heavily throughout the year. Overall, man, just a lot of injuries, a lot of players going on IR, a lot of star players. We had Cooper Kupp go on IR. We had Joe Mixon is banged up. Justin Jefferson got banged up in his game. We had Deebo Samuel and AJ Brown just coming out saying they're going to be out a couple weeks. Not to mention the week 1 injuries we already had. Isaiah Pacheco was on IR, man. Talk to me. How are you feeling about these injuries right now after week 2?
Yeah, I mean, injuries are always just a very unfortunate part of fantasy because, I mean, you draft guys and maybe they underperform, which is one thing, but to see guys get hurt is always just it's kind of infuriating for fantasy just because you can't. There's not much you can do. They're just the unfortunate part of the game. So I do think like this is a big week. I mean, you're talking there's a lot of like third, second round kind of guys that got hurt this week. That are, big name players that are staples of your lineups that will now be out multiple weeks. But I mean, the biggest thing is definitely Isaiah Pacheco, just because they've already came out and said this is going to be a 68-week long injury. And that's significant. I mean, that's a big chunk of the fantasy season. So, and you have like this one of the best offenses in the NFL. So now we have a situation where we're not quite sure who the guy is, who's going to step in. I think that there should be like Carson Steele, in my opinion, looks like the guy who's probably going to be the early down grinder with Samaje Perine playing third downs. But which one is going to be the key pickup during this time? And you also have Kareem Hunt, who's currently visiting with the team, could also be signed by this team as well. So for me personally, I'll just give my take real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, with when it comes to injuries, though, like this, because we're going to have that dilemma with the Rams receivers, right? There's going to be other teams that we just have a ton of just injuries, and we're trying to debate, like that's that Chiefs scenario. We saw like there's going to be a lot of question marks when it comes to injuries. Strategy-wise, though, sometimes you got to think about this, right? Like a lot of times you think, this is happening to me. Every year this happens to me. My guys get hurt. And that's a common thing I hear. And it's like everybody has injuries, every single team. And you talked about it. That's just fantasy football. So take the poor me out of it. This is only happening to me, and just realize when you're coming up here, guys are going to have other buys. Every other team has injuries. So keep your mind strong and just make sure you know that every team has holes in it. Your team, your fantasy team, is not the only team with holes. So when you're looking into trades, right, especially trades, Tyler, and you have your star power names, the easiest thing to do is be like, I have to get depth. Let me trade away my stud. And a lot of times you draft these studs for the reason that they can be the anchor for your team. And then when you tear down and you get more questionable pieces, it's how you start to lose your fantasy league. This is one of the worst things you can do. So with your star power, I would say this: be very cautious when you trade your star power away, especially if it's performing star power, early season performers. The reason why you want to be careful is because if you give away producing talent, that takes away your chance at stacking up wins right now before the bye weeks get here. So if you're going to trade a stud, it better be to have like a rock solid lineup, and you better get an overpay on that stud, especially with all the injuries happening right now, Tyler.
Yeah, I think trading away studs is just a bad idea. Like a lot of times in fantasy football is you're carried by studs, and you're able to like right now, like, kind of mentioned Carson Steele, like maybe Carson Steele ends up being the play here and he's the guy in this backfield. And now you have a guy that you can rely on as a solid RB2 if you drafted poorly at the RB2 spot.
It's like Jordan Mason and J.K. Dobbins last week. Same
like
thing.
There's going to be guys, the studs are the irreplaceable people in fantasy football that you just need. You need to rely on week in and week out. Maybe you missed on your studs, maybe not. It's way too early with some of these guys, like I still think it's way too early with like Jamar Chase. CD Lamb had a good week last week, but even like Tyreek Hill, I know people are probably going to panic because
Yeah.
of the Tua situation, but like keep your studs. And I wouldn't be tearing down because that's, like you said, that's honestly how you lose in fantasy football. You
Well, it's
can't
tough.
replace that production.
It's tough because those are the moves. You're like, I want my lineup to look balanced, and I don't want it to
Yeah.
have a waiver wire player in there. But sometimes those guys are startable, right? Like if you
Yeah.
had Alec Pierce in there, Rashid Shaheed, you have your Demarcus Robinsons. There's players in there that maybe they're not great, but like, is that really that much different inconsistency wise than like a Calvin Ridley has been this year, than a George Pickens has been this year? Then some of these guys that you took as your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, they're inconsistent as well. So that's the difference between a stud and between a waiver player or maybe a flex type player, is the consistency aspect. They can give you those big games more often. So be careful, be very careful with trading away those players, especially if you're not getting back like players that can enter that next tier. Are you panicking if you're 0-2 right now, Tyler? Because that's another thing too. When it comes to injuries, some people are like, man, I have to get a win now. Like I got to trade away Cooper Kupp. I got to trade away CMC. I got to trade away Pacheco. Like, are you panicking if you're 0-2? What's your strategy when you're 2-0, 1-1, 0-2? Like, what's the panic meter?
No, I mean, like you see it all the time. And I talk about this kind of stuff all the time too. Like the NFL landscape drastically changes week to week. Like injuries happen, and you could be looking at your team. Your team looks amazing, and then you drafted, Isaiah Pacheco, and you also had Cooper Kupp, and you're just sitting at your team. I have Cooper Kupp, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like my team's going to be loaded, and now you just suffer through 2 massive injuries, and your team looks completely different. Like things can change so quickly, and also players like if you're 0-2, the problem it probably is right now is just like underperforming players. Like you maybe drafted, I don't know, Jamar Chase in the first round, or like maybe you had CMC.
Yeah.
But like CMC is going to come back at some point this year. Like you just got to kind of grind through it. And like if you're in a league where teams make the playoffs and it's a playoffs, like it just comes down to like making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Literally anything can happen in the playoffs. So if you're 0-2 right now, like I wouldn't be panicking. You just got to continue to grind, work the waiver wire, add some of these guys that we're going to talk about, and just keep trying to win. Like that, like there's never a point unless you're like 0-7.
Yeah.
Sure, you're probably out, but like it's way too early to be in panic mode right now. There's so much football to still play. The NFL in 2 weeks is probably going to look a lot different than the NFL right now. So no, I wouldn't be panicking. I would just be, grinding a little bit hard. You got to grind no matter what,
Gotta
even if
grind.
you're 2-0. Like doesn't
Gotta
matter. You
grind.
still
Yeah,
got to
because if
you
this
got
was
to
the
turn
week
that roster.
7, if this is the week 7 and week 8 loss back to back, you're not panicking off of that, right? Like
Yeah.
it's fantasy and this is a long season. So grind this thing out. You mentioned it. You said things can change in an instant. Things can change
Yeah.
drastically. And in Carolina, Tyler, things changed very instantly. Bryce Young
I was
got
surprised. I'm not
benched.
surprised. I, I'm surprised it happened already.
It's a surprising move. Well, Dave Canales have just come out and said, like, Bryce is our guy. This is who we're going
Yeah.
with. He's our quarterback. And then the very next day, they announced he's benched for Andy Dalton, which does have a lot of impact, Tyler, on a lot of players. You're talking Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette. We got the running backs even, too. If this offense can be better with Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, Bryce Young did not play well. Do you think, like, what's your thoughts overall on this quarterback change?
I think it was needed. Like the problem is that, and I was honestly thinking about like when I take showers, I do a lot of thinking. Like that's my thinking spot. And I was thinking 2 days ago, I was thinking about this show, and I was thinking we got to talk about Bryce Young and how he needs to be benched, like in a
Yeah,
couple of weeks if this is going to continue. And the reason being is just like this is a large sample size. I know like he's still early, like he's still young, but there's been no signs of improvement from Price. Like there's been none. This offense has been dreadful. You see the players, they're so frustrated out there. And like I understand that wide receivers will get frustrated a lot, but like this has been a full year of Bryce not looking better. And you thought, maybe the coaching staff and everything changing maybe helps him out. It's arguably look worse. Like
yeah.
you can't throw for 84 passing yards and expect to have a job. So I was surprised that it already happened. it definitely was going to happen if this was going to continue to be the trend. And honestly, I think this is a really good opportunity to buy in the Panthers. And the reason being is because hey, if Andy Dalton has proven to us that he's capable. Now, is he going to be the best starting quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely not. But there's a chance that Bryce Young was just the problem. Like, he's bad.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks can be bad. We've seen it with Zach Wilson. He's a bad quarterback. Like, these guys could just potentially be bad. You get a new quarterback in there, and it's able to just everybody else is able to do their job and is able to perform. So right now, I think this is a good buy low opportunity with these guys, because if things go differently this week, this offense looks a lot better. You won't be able to have this opportunity anymore. So I would honestly try to buy into these players, like you're saying. We talked about churn your roster. If you're 0-2, got to make some moves. And this is a move that I would be trying to make because it's not an expensive move and guys who have potential if Andy Dalton plays better. So I think it's a good move for fantasy football that has potential. And honestly, I think it's going to be better because it can't get much worse than what it's been.
It can't get much worse. And I think for this offense, I agree with you on one aspect, Tyler. You said with Andy Dalton, things will move. You can buy low on some of these players. Will they be elite? I don't think we have an elite player on this team.
No.
But I think we find Deontay might be a little more serviceable. We think Adam Thielen in your deep leagues might be a bench type player. Maybe you're starting him during flex weeks if things pop off with this offense. Chuba Hubbard now is back on the flex radar, maybe deep RB3 radar because of all the injuries. But this team just has a little bit of optimism. And with Bryce Young, there was no optimism at all. You could see it. Week 1, it was like, oh, shit, there's no improvement out of this team. We were talking about him last week. Like, you have to be able – you should have been playing in the preseason for weeks. You should have been playing every single snap in the preseason. And, the one thing I don't want to say is, like, Bryce Young is just bad at football. He's just a terrible quarterback. I think that he needs time to develop. He was a player that got thrust in pretty much immediately. And I think he needed to be on a bench for a while and learn the game and learn the speed of the game because of his size. He's a little smaller, obviously. He could have used a few months, some years to develop. And so I hope he gets a chance and he comes back later in the season and we do see him again and he looks better when the Panthers are far out of playoff contention, which they will be. But he reminds me a little bit of like Alex Smith. Like maybe he was just thrust into the lineup a little too early. Had a very successful college career, had a lot of high expectations because of the trade. It was like, he has to produce. And CJ Stroud looks so much better than him right after him. So I don't want to give up on Bryce Young. If I'm buying on anybody, and you can tell me if you agree on this, if I'm buying anybody, the only player I'm really buying right now is Deontay Johnson. And I think at a lesser scale, I'd be very watchful of Xavier Legette because he had a few opportunities week 1 and then just disappeared in week 2.
Yeah, I would be I would be buying in on Deontay. And the reason why I'd be buying in is because he's just a target sponge. And we saw it last year with Andy Dalton. I want to say he played in 1 game last year. And it was honestly a pretty good game. And Adam Thielen was good in that game too. So, Dave Canales, we've seen his offense last year. Now, obviously the Bucs are just kind of continuing to hum, but we saw it last year with Dave Canales too. And I would personally be buying in on, I would buy in on Jonathan Brooks. I would even buy in on Chuba Hubbard right now too. Like these guys can't be that expensive. And I think that if you're a team, you drafted Jonathan Brooks and maybe you're 0-2, how much longer can you truly wait? And you're a team that's 2-0. Why not take that shot if your IR spot's open too? You can just stash them there, see what happens this week with the offense. And I do think that there's a real possibility that this offense is a lot better than what it has been, and it's fantasy relevant. So once again, I would be buying in on this opportunity because it's an opportunity that it can't get much worse. And I think that the arrow's only pointing up. So yeah, I'd be buying in on Deontay Johnson. And I, we kind of heard one guy talk about this too, is we've heard Tom Brady talk about it, how these rookie quarterbacks are kind of thrown into these jobs. And that's kind of the problem with Bryce Young too, is I don't want to give up on him, but the confidence is just completely shot on him. He has no confidence there. And the whole point of Bryce Young was just him being an elite processor and able to dissect plays and, throw with accuracy and everything. And nothing's been there for him. And now whether or not we want to go to he was just just thrust into this opportunity, the pressure was sky high for him is one thing. But I do think that there's a chance that you might not see Bryce Young on the Panthers. Like, he may not play another snap for this team. Like, he
No,
may
you
not.
think like that would be an insane turn of events to come in as a starter. You go get the quarterback whisperer. This entire coaching staff has been changed, and then to get traded or maybe released later in the year during your rookie deal, that would be, or maybe you're just a bench player the rest of your time. I don't think there's a chance that we just see the team completely give up on Bryce Young, even if Dalton looks the part.
This
And
is
it'd be funny if the
this is
quarterback whisperer was
early though.
Dalton, right?
This is, but the problem is that, like, I'm shocked that it's this early. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what because like what you said too is Dave Canales came out and said like Bryce is our guy, and then it was the next day Bryce is benched. So like this, I don't know if something happened in like the front office. Maybe they're like, no, what, like we've seen this. We got to, or maybe they're losing the locker room because the guys were like, bro, we can't win with him as our quarterback. Like he's just not there. So I don't know. Like I maybe because I don't think Andy Dalton is going to be bad. Like I really don't. I think Andy Dalton's going to be pretty serviceable. And maybe you're not in playoff contention, but like the fact that you already made this move right now is just it's crazy. Like I think it's
To me, it looks like they're trying to win football games. Like they're like, dude, we were terrible last year. I don't know what their pick status is this year. I don't know. I want to say that they gave up their pick this year too. Like they don't have either a first or a second round pick this
I
year.
don't
Like
remember.
something like that. Anyway, even if it's not, they're going to be a terrible football team again. You got to give some life to your organization because right now it's on a flat line. All these dudes are like, this is a brand new coaching staff. I want to say it's a brand new front office too. Like I'm pretty sure they cleaned house after last year. They're like, we're not trying to lose and have the old stench still on us, man. This is like they got to have new production. So I get it, man. You made a trade for Deontay Johnson this offseason. You invested in Jonathan Brooks this offseason. Like you tried to get this thing going, invested in your receiving core the last 2 years, and Jonathan Mingo on the get. Like something's got to pop off. And if it looks this bad, you're getting blown out in back-to-back games, something had to change, man. But
yeah.
On to a team that's a little bit better off, we could say, defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, man, going through problems of their own. Obviously, they dealt with, injury. Hollywood Brown is going to be out for the rest of the year. So that was already a big loss for them, at least for the rest of the regular season. A high priority signing that they made this offseason. But then losing their star running back, I think, is probably a little bit more crucial. And you alluded to it earlier. Isaiah Pacheco expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks with the fractured fibula. And it's probably going to be on the long term of that. My guess is that they bring him back slow. He's ready for a Super Bowl run.
Mm-hmm.
But what to do with the Chiefs running back core now? This is a big problem, Tyler, because there's not a for sure option. Normally with running backs, it's like we know who the next guy up is, and we really don't with this Chiefs running back room. Carson Strong is the name, the priority name, in my opinion. I think you alluded to this as well. You talked about it. Carson Strong, first crack at goal line opportunities is a report out there. This is the guy that kind of has that Isaiah Pacheco, like we drafted you late. We like you as a player. You perform well during the offseason. But the team also brought in Samaje Perine right before the start of the season, and they designated him with the passing game work. We also have reports of a visit for Kareem Hunt this Tuesday. And then there's also Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is still on IR, expected to come off on week 5. So there's a lot of options that can be thrown your way. How are you looking at this thing? Who is the one running back you want to have right
now? So if I had to pick somebody, I would personally go with Samaje Perine. And the reason why I would go with Perine is just because this is a team that likes to throw the football. I do think Carson Steele will probably be this team's early down.
Carson Strong again?
Honestly, don't remember.
I think I did. I think I said Carson Strong. I've been doing that all week.
Yeah, we're talking about a pre-show, so he knows it's Carson Steele. So Carson Steele, early down back, and like you said, probably going to be used around the goal line. The problem is that the Chiefs, I don't know what the split is this year, but like in years past, this has been one of the pass happiest teams around the goal line. They throw the ball a lot, and we've seen it with moments, even with Isaiah Pacheco there. Like Isaiah Pacheco this year was an absolute workhorse. But like early with Pacheco, when he started kind of, gaining some traction, we saw with Jerick McKinnon, where Jerick McKinnon was this team's receiving back. So I think that we see something similar, and you see it all the time. Like these veteran players, especially with like a team like Kansas City, is always preferred in like high leverage situations that they don't you also had Carson Steele, I want to say this past weekend, had a fumble. Like, if he's going to be fumbling the football, they're not going to trust a young, inexperienced, undrafted kind of guy compared to the veteran who's been around. So, like, and the other thing you mentioned too is you could potentially have Clyde coming back. So, like, this is a really tough situation to navigate, but it's also a very important situation to navigate because 8 weeks is a long time. That's a
Yeah.
large chunk of the fantasy football season that if one of these guys is able to step up, he could potentially be an RB2 in fantasy football. So for me personally, I'm going to go with P. Ryan. The reason why is it looks like he's this team's preferred pass catching back. I do think he'll be in on those downs. I think he'll be in like the 2-minute style offense. He'll be in there. I wouldn't even be shocked if he's kind of seeing some early down work as well with Carson Strong. And when the team gets down near the goal line, I wouldn't even be shocked if it's kind of split where you do see Carson Strong or Carson Steele see some of that early or goal line work, but also they line up like in shotgun and Samaje P. Ryan standing out there next to Mahomes. They have so many different things that they want to do. So I personally would go with Samaje, but it is like I would want all of them because I think
Yeah.
that's just a good offense that you want pieces of.
Somebody's going to pan out, and I think Carson Steele's the one. My bad. I threw that your way. That Carson Strong your way. My bad. I didn't mean to do that.
No, you're good.
Put it in the mental. But Carson Steele is the player that I would want, right? He's the player to me that has the end zone work, but he's risky. And you talked about it, like he came off of the fumble. He's a young player. He has to prove himself more. And I think the one thing that Andy Reid is probably looking for is who can be on the field, 15 to 20 touches. And Samaje Perine is, as the vet, is the one player who's proven, at least in some capacity, that he's able to do that. I think that's why the team goes and gets looks at a Kareem Hunt. That's why I think they're probably hoping that Clyde is ready to rock and roll once he's off IR. And to me, he's a stash. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a stash because if this thing doesn't pan out, if we see Carson Strong fumbling the ball, if we see Samaje Perine is not able to get yardage, or the team doesn't bring in Kareem Hunt, now I think we see Clyde Edwards-Helaire, at least for 4 to 6 weeks, have the possibility of being an RB3 for your team. So he's the free IR stash right now. I think you can get him for free in your leagues, probably available in most leagues. But Carson Strong is a name I'd want for the short term because here's the thing. Yeah, he's risky, but if he pans out and he's their goal line back, if he is on the field for 12 to 15 carries, that's baby Isaiah Pacheco. You can count him in as an RB3 flex on a weekly basis. So I like Carson Strong.
How much
I think
would you use? Fab.
Huh?
How much fab would you spend?
I'm not a big fab spender, right? But if I needed a running back, I'd be somewhere in like that $10 to $15 range for Carson Strong. For P. Ryan, I'd probably be more in like the $3 to $5 marker. And then I'd be hoping to get really what I'd be hoping to do is get Clyde Edwards-Helaire for $1 or $0, and then hope that, or Kareem Hunt for $1 or $0, and then hope that I can get a win here in the next 2 weeks. Like that's really what I'd be hoping for. What about you? How much would you spend for P. Ryan?
It's tough, man. I would so personally, I would probably
I do though, right?
Yeah, well, like last week, JK was my top ad, and I do look at it kind of the same way with JK, where you could potentially I'd be okay spending like 20% on both these guys because if one of them is able to step up, like you have a rock solid RB2 for 8 weeks of the season, and that's valuable, like in fantasy football. That's incredibly valuable. So, but you could also, take the risk where none of these guys pan out, and it is Clyde. But I'd be trying to get all of them, even Clyde. Like you said, you can just stash him on your IR and see what happens if he does come back, because I think his is more like he was dealing with PTSD. So we don't that's a tricky situation too. Like maybe he's not ready to come back. I don't know. So, it's a tricky situation, but it's a situation where I would definitely be trying to add one of these guys because they could be so valuable in fantasy football.
Real quick, as of recording, we don't know if Kareem Hunt has signed with the team. Kareem Hunt is visiting the Chiefs this week. This is a player we've seen in our fantasy lineups. Played decent for the Browns last year to end the season. Was kind of their red zone guy for a good portion of the second half. We'll be visiting the team. Already familiar with the offense, familiar with the team. What about him? Because there's a possibility where they're just like, hey, we want to give a guy 15 touches, and it's neither of these two. Do you think Kareem Hunt still has it? Are you signing? Are you trying to get him in free agency? Like, what's your thoughts on Kareem Hunt?
I mean, I would also be trying to So what I would do, and like this is crazies. There's crazies. I'm a crazy. Like I set a line for 3 a.m. and I go in there in all my leagues and I look at who's still available. If I wake up and I see Kareem Hunt's available and I missed out on the other two guys, like I would even if Kareem Hunt gets signed, I would probably put like 5% of my fab on Kareem Hunt.
Yeah,
Because I do think there's a chance, like you said, that he's the answer here. Like he's been the guy, even when running backs are dust, which I think that there's a chance that Kareem Hunt is kind of dust, but like Zeke is dust and he's getting the work. Like once again, teams just always fault in these kind of situations to just proven commodities. Like
yeah.
even though they may be at the end of their career, Kareem Hunt has already been in here. They know what to expect with him. He knows probably still this offense still. So I do think he's a guy that once again I'd be adding. And if he's available, if I wake up and he's still like a free agent, I would 100% be adding him to the end of my bench as well.
I think
If he gets signed.
it'll definitely depend because if he signs, you're not getting him for free anymore. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna be a player that
Yeah,
people
like
want. So
and there's a chance that we might not know today. So
yeah.
even if we don't know, like and he clears, I would be adding him.
Yes, I especially if we don't know, I think that's a free clear. If we find out today that Kareem Hunt does get signed, and like I said, this is as of recording. If we find out he gets signed today, that means they saw something that lets them know he's going to be a part of their offense. I don't think that you sign Kareem Hunt for a depth move, in my opinion. I think you probably elevate somebody from the practice squad if you feel confident with your two guys ahead of you. If they feel like Kareem Hunt still has it, it can be a guy that gets 12 to 15 touches, maybe in the next week or two. He's a player that I would spend like $10 on. He's a safer name, and if he sticks, he's getting red zone work, he's getting passing game work. We know he's getting it all. So to me, he has the most upside out of any of the Chiefs backs, including Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If he gets signed, he's the one I would want. I would spend $10 to $12 on him. All right, moving on to another kind of convoluted scenario. The Rams wide receivers. Obviously, it was already murky with Puka Nacua going down in week one, out expected to be out for 6 to 8 weeks at least. Cooper Kupp went down, had a high ankle in week two. And so now we're left, Tyler, with kind of just the best of the rest here with the Rams. Obviously, Demarcus Robinson, we talked about him as a pickup, but there's other names out there. Tyler Johnson, we talked about him. Now we got Jordan Whittington as a part of this thing. And even on the back end now, we saw Tutu Atwell have a role with this team last week after the injury. So we have a lot of receiving options, not to mention that this team is also down on a lot of offensive linemen. Just lost another starting offensive lineman potentially going on IR. When it comes to these Ram receivers, obviously the pickup is Demarcus Robinson. I don't think you or I is going to deny that. Do you have? I have him as a wide receiver 3. Huh?
I'm denying that. I don't want him.
You don't want Demarcus Robinson?
Mm-mm.
Well, I got him as a wide receiver 3. There's the other options there: Tyler Johnson, Whittington, and Tutu Atwell. You don't have him as a wide receiver 3. Talk to me. How are you feeling about this receiving corps?
I like Tutu Atwell. And the reason being is
Tutu Atwell?
He ran 10 routes last week, 10 routes, 4 targets. And you said it last week. Matthew Stafford needs to trust these guys. And last year we saw Tutu Atwell have moments of fantasy relevancy when Cooper Kupp was out of the lineup early on. And also Puka Nacua was a little bit banged up there too. We saw some moments out of him. And personally, I think that this is the opportunity. Like his routes are going to go way up with Cooper Kupp out of here. And the problem too, like the wide receiver position is not the running back position. Like you have to be good at football in order to really earn targets at the wide receiver position. It doesn't just work out. Oh, this guy's hurt. Well, the next guy up, he's going to see all the work. It's just not how it works. So the problem is that like none of these guys are very good. Yes, they're bodies that are just out there and they're the only guys out there. But like, I would not be shocked either if like 1 week it is Demarcus Robinson, the next week it's Jordan Whittington, and the following week it's Tutu Atwell. Like, I personally would, sure, if you want to go with Demarcus Robinson, like, yes, but also I would go with Tutu Atwell because I think that Tutu Atwell is going to be the cheapest one, and really probably the most free one. And I think that he could be a guy who has a couple decent weeks that you need to play him, or that maybe you have to play him, and you play him and he can give you some of that relevancy. So for me personally, I would go with Tutu Atwell.
See, I think for sure it's Robinson, in my opinion. He's like the locked in starter to me. And I feel like these next three guys are just kind of a carousel, right? When you talk about Tyler Johnson, he's the upside play weekly. You got Whittington, who's probably going to be more like a PPR type guy, low ceiling, just catch at the line of scrimmage, do some short yardage stuff. And then you also got Atwell, which, like you said, is the veteran on this team, but he was pushed down the depth chart early in the season. That's the problem I see with him is, has he earned the trust of this coaching staff, or was there something bigger that we didn't know about, right? Like, was there a reason why he wasn't seeing the field early on? And then obviously last week did play a more important role. So I do agree with the fact, like, Stafford has to go with his guys. This is who Stafford is, but he also locks in on players. Like, I don't think we're going to see a lesser version of Stafford that's not throwing for over 200 yards, which bodes well for Demarcus Robinson. That bodes well for Tutu Atwell, the guys that he already knows. So we saw week one the catch to Tyler Johnson. I think he'll be a little bit more risky. I think Whittington just doesn't have enough ceiling to throw in your lineups on a weekly basis. But for at least the next 4 weeks, we will get a wide receiver 3 out of this offense. Whether it's Atwell, whether it's any of these guys, Demarcus Robinson, one of these players is going to be a wide receiver 3. So if you're looking at options, pick them up. Whittington, Atwell, if you can get one for free, if you got to pay up a little bit more, one of these guys will be a wide receiver 3 on a weekly basis, because that's just who Matt Stafford is. He makes players good. He makes players great. And I think force feeding guys like I said, Demarcus Robinson is the one I trust the most. He had a strong stretch last year, overtook Atwell last year as the wide receiver 3. But if Atwell's doing what he did last week, he's going to see a lot of volume as well. And especially if he's, let another injury happen to this receiving core. I'm not trying to wish that, but let another injury happen. I think these Rams receivers are must roster at this point. Let me ask you this though: does the offensive line concern you? Right? Like,
Yeah.
we can talk about it and be like, there's a lot of optimism. Stafford is who he is. Sean McVay is an offensive genius. Does the offensive line bother you for rostering these guys or starting them?
100%. Like I just don't feel, I wouldn't feel confident yet. Like hopefully you have better options. I mean, you could have had some decent injuries though, that unfortunately you don't have better options.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's kind of like a snowball effect where these guys are, unfortunately, like obviously they're in the pros, so they're good players, but like they're just not very good real NFL wide receivers. Like these are kind of guys that belong more as a wide receiver 4 or 5 on a lot of depth charts than unfortunately the wide receiver 1 now. And then you also combine that with the offensive line. Like they're down a lot of pieces along this offensive line where if you're having trouble with these guys getting open, it's not like you're going to have time. Like you're going to have to make quick reads and get the ball out of your hands if you're Matthew Stafford. And then it also kind of affects like Kyron Williams, where you're not able to really move the ball as effectively as you once were, and you're not able to get the yards. And this team just came off of probably one of the best matchups that they're going to have this season against Arizona. Like Arizona's a bad defense, so it's just, I don't know. It's there's a lot of things going on with the Rams. It's really unfortunate because injuries just suck. But man, oh
Yeah.
man, this offense has been annihilated with injuries, unfortunately, and
It's hard. And if
it
you're a
affects
fantasy
everything.
manager, if you're a fantasy manager with these Rams receivers, it's been tough. And they got the
Yeah,
Niners, they got the Bears, and the Packers before the bye. So
that's
gonna see
rough.
some. These receivers are gonna see some work, man. So, we've been talking a lot about these injuries and benching, bro. We got to get to a little bit more optimism, bro. And this Saints offense, man. Holy shit, this Saints offense looks elite right now. Clint Kubiak came in there and did his thing. We were talking about this unit like having offensive line troubles and who are we going to trust, and down on Olave. And a lot of people were down on, Alvin Kamara, and Shaheed is just a dart throw, and Derek Carr, get him out of there and throw Spencer Rattler in there. This was all the offseason talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are. This team is 2-0, highest scoring team in the league, one of the highest scoring teams after 2 games in NFL history. They're a threat, and it's easy to look at. Do you think they're a fluke, or do you think they're legit? Because we've seen teams have hot starts and then taper off.
Mhm.
You think they're a fluke, or you think they're legit?
I don't. It's tough. I really don't know what to anticipate. I will say if I have these guys, like I'm just riding the wave. You know what I mean? Like I want to be looking to sell high on them or anything like that. But if I had to guess, I do think it's a bit fluky. I think that they'll come back down to earth. But that's not to say that like they're gonna fall off and be one of the worst offense in the league. I just think that they'll probably regress a little bit and maybe go towards like the middle of the pack in terms of offense, of like scoring and efficiency and everything. Because you do have a new OC in here, and sometimes you see like when there's a new style offense, like defenses may take a little bit of time to get adjusted to the tendencies and all this
Mike
kind of
McDaniel
stuff.
was in Miami, right?
Yeah, like they'll take a little bit of time, but then there'll be a blueprint of how to stop them, and they'll stop them. Also, I'm not ready to say like Derek Carr is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like we've seen him play for a long time. He's a decent quarterback, but like he's playing. I wouldn't even say he's playing out like this offense is just move. Like I want to say they've scored on literally every single possession.
Yeah, they have
They which just that's not going to
19
continue.
straight possessions they scored
Like
on.
yeah, like that's going to slow down a little bit, but I think it's obviously very good. If you drafted these guys, once again, I don't think that they're just going to fall off. I think if anything, they'll probably regress closer to the middle of the pack. But yeah, I mean they look really good right now, and definitely a lot better than what I anticipated uh, them to be. So
Yeah,
congratulations if you drafted some Saints.
I thought they could be better, but like to see them at this level is crazy. Especially if
Yeah.
you told me like Chris Olave hasn't been a big part of this offense. I'd be like, and
Hmm.
Taysom Hill got hurt. I'd be like, they're probably 1-1 or 0-2. Like, there's no way they're 2-0 scoring this many points. But this has been a resurgence, and I think Derek Carr right now is the second highest quarterback in fantasy right now with
Yeah.
back-to-back 20-point games. He hasn't even had a 300-yard game, which tells you the landscape of fantasy quarterbacks right now, by the
Yeah.
way. But Derek Carr to me he's kind of back against the wall right now. He dealt with the injury for a good portion of last season. And I think you made a really good point about like new offensive coordinators. Sometimes they bring wrinkles that teams aren't expecting. You don't know what to
Mhm.
expect out of these guys. And we've seen deep shots in back-to-back weeks. Like I mentioned, he's only been around 200, 225-yard passing. We've seen back-to-back deep shots to Rashid Shaheed in both weeks. Like
Yeah.
that's not sustainable. Teams
No.
cannot. I mean, unless he's Deshaun Jackson, unless Rashid Shaheed turned into Deshaun Jackson this
Yeah.
offseason, at some point that slows down. Alvin
Yeah.
Kamara has literally been unstoppable.
Mhm.
Literally unstoppable. At some point, he will slow down. Now, this isn't to say the Saints will not be a good football team. Probably, I mean, shit, they look like they might be on track to win that division with the way they're playing right now. I think at some point this offense slows down a little bit, but I don't really see this thing slowing down to where we don't have 4 to 5 fantasy relevant players on this team. When you're talking about Olave, who's probably still going to be a wide receiver too. Rashid Shaheed is going to be on the flex radar every week. Derek Carr is a QB2 right now and very startable in super flex leagues. Alvin Kamara is a top 5 running back right now. We have to call it what it is. He's at least a top 5 running back. So you have options on this team. It's just, do we get that sustained value? Like, is Shaheed going to be a top 15 receiver this year? No chance in hell. But I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I just don't
I
see
don't
it.
No,
But
I don't think so. Not
overall, it's exciting to see, though.
yeah, and like the biggest problem is just like it's not sustainable. Like what they're doing right now, they're not going
That's
to
not
keep up.
sustainable. But like, is it sustainable at a smaller scale? You think? Like at a
Well,
lesser scale?
here's the problem is that like they're just scoring at absolutely, you know, mind-numbingly 100% rate. Like
Yeah.
they're not going to continue that, and they're going to have to throw the ball, and like we'll see. Like there's going to be adversity with this offense at some point soon, and then we'll see truly who the Saints are. So for me personally, like if you can maybe talk to somebody about Rashid Shaheed being a top 20 wide receiver and you can trade high while it's going high, I would personally do that. Like there's no way that this like 70 yards uh, is going to happen every single week. It's going to fall down. They're going to slow down. Now, that's not to say that they're going to completely fall off. This can still be a pretty good offense, but like it's definitely going to slow way down. And a lot of times what you see happen with this kind of stuff, like anything in general, is that there's a massive overcorrection. So when you have this team that's playing at such a high efficiency rate right now, like there's going to be some really big stinkers probably in the next couple of weeks where this offense just does not do anything offensively because it has to overcorrect and overcompensate. So I'm not going to say that this is not going to be a bad offense. This could be a good offense all season long. It's just going to slow down, and we'll see truly who the Saints are when it slows down a little bit.
I think there's still some high power nature to this because you look at what the Niners were, like I got the Niner hat in the back, obviously a Niner fan. We look at what Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo, Ayuk, like this, it had heavy hitters in the Niners offense, and maybe this Saints offense isn't the Niners offense, but we're seeing a similar line of production here. Like we're seeing, Alvin Kamara really look like Christian McCaffrey, which to me could stick. Like I don't know, maybe he's not the RB1 overall for the season, but I mean, we got to call him a top 3 to 5 value right now in fantasy at the running back position. So their next 4 games are against Philadelphia Eagles. You got the Atlanta Falcons, Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All profile is like high scoring games over the next 4. So definitely we talk about writing this thing out. Your Shaheed, your Olave, even continue to put him in your lineups. Foster Moreau, if you're struggling at tight end, could be a name that you want to throw in there at tight end. I'm cool with that. Derek Carr belongs in starting lineups. Kamara. There's still a lot of meat left on the bone here, but at the same time, be cautious because there might be some kind of correction. It remains to be seen, but this is the hottest team in football right now. For one of the hottest teams in football, too, one of the struggling offense, the Chicago Bears offense, struggling in a major way. Rookie Caleb Williams got the win against the Titans in Week 1. But massively struggled over the first 2 weeks of his NFL career against the Houston Texans over last week. The team did not get the win, but it was apparent that there's still a learning curve here with Caleb Williams. And, it's easy to just be like, oh, he sucks, he's trash. This Bears organization, they don't know how to draft quarterbacks or support their quarterbacks. They're the problem. But sometimes it takes offenses time to get things going. And I'm not sure how to think about this because I came into the season a little bit more pessimistic on Caleb and this Bears offense than most. The offensive line is terrible. DeAndre Swift doesn't really add a whole lot to me running back wise. And then the receivers, you got injury prone, kind of Keenan Allen. You have DJ Moore, who was really advocating for Justin Fields. And then, they trade him away. Romo Dunze, a lot of people thought he was a tear down behind Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison. What's your thoughts on the Bears offense, bro? Because I see some struggles still in their future.
Yeah, I think right now it definitely it's not great. It doesn't look good. And I do want to say though, like they've played Houston's defense is going to be one of the better defense in
That's
the
a good
NFL.
defense.
And Tennessee looks like they're, at least like we talked about, the front defensive line, this is a good defensive unit. So the problem right now is just the sacks and the pressure that Caleb Williams is facing right now. He's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. He's sacked 9 times now. And there were times that it was not Caleb Williams' fault. Like the dude is just there was a couple times where I want to say I don't remember who it was, but it was off the right side of the offensive line. Literally, the dude, I don't know who it is, who their tackle is there, but
Is
got
it
beat
right?
off
I
the
think it's
ball.
right.
Right. Yeah, it is right. Got beat off the ball and Caleb doesn't even know he's coming yet because it's literally a second and he's getting smashed. Like there's this offensive line does not look very good. And the hope is that this offensive line gets better throughout the year. Now there's a chance maybe it doesn't get better. Like it continues to suck all season long. Maybe they go through some injuries and that only compounds the fact like this may not be a good offensive line to begin with at all. So I have hope though, because if it does get better, I just believe in the talent of Caleb. Like I think that, he's a rookie quarterback. He not every single like quarterback is going to be CJ Stroud. Like
Right.
guys are going to take a little bit of time to really get going. I believe in Caleb as a prospect. He's shown little flashes, even though there's been some interceptions that he's thrown some questionable balls. Like you just see it at times with Caleb. Like, wow, like the dude is able to make some really good plays. But so personally for me, like I would buy into this Bears offense right now just because like it looks really bad. They were on Sunday Night Football. You were able to see like DJ Moore looking super frustrated with the current state of the offense. Like when these kind of games happen, it always creates great buy low opportunities just because of how like these games being on primetime television and everybody's seeing it. So I personally would buy into it. I would even buy into DeAndre Swift. And the reason why is that he's being used as a workhorse running back. He's playing 65, 70% of the snaps. And if this offense is able to get better, like his stats will also improve as well. So I'd buy in just because of how bad it looks right now and the hope that it does get better with Caleb Williams maturing.
Yeah, trying to buy low on this offense. I don't share the same sentiment, unfortunately. I get buying low on them, and I get that there probably is some potential here. It's just how long does it take? How
Yeah.
long does it take for this offensive line to gel? How long does it take for Caleb to look the part? Is Keenan Allen really banged up? Is Romo Dunze still injured? I know he played, was it 95% of the snaps over this last weekend, but is he still hurt? Like, to me, I have a lot of concerns about this offense. It's good to see Caleb using his legs, but he looks under duress every time he drops back.
He
The
does.
offensive line looks bad. And so for a quarterback that's still figuring out protection, still figuring out how to deliver the football accurately and timely, there's a lot here for quarterbacks to learn. And I think we get spoiled sometimes with our own thoughts on players. With this guy's elite talent, he's the next Patrick Mahomes, he's the next this, he's the next that. And then we overdraft players, we over expect. At some point, there's going to be a part where Caleb looks like an NFL quarterback, where he looks like he belongs. He just hasn't thrown over 200 yards yet. It's a struggle. The offense hasn't looked good in general. Brand new offensive coordinator there who didn't, I mean, if we're being honest, Shane Waldron didn't really put together a great offense in Seattle last year. So I look at this thing and there's a lot of red flags when it comes to the Bears. And for me, I'm kind of staying away from Caleb. I'm staying away from DeAndre Swift. I think the only player here that's even startable right now is maybe DJ Moore or Keenan Allen as like a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 flex for your team. So I'm kind of out on this entire Bears offense until we see any sign of life from them. An offense I was high on before we get out of here, man. An offense I was high on was his Colts offense. I thought for sure Anthony Richardson, especially after week 1, was like a lock to look the part. I thought for sure we were going to be talking about Michael Pittman as a high-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, back-end wide receiver 1. I thought Shane Steichen would have this thing figured out, and Anthony Richardson would be, goal line, using the tush push potentially. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just had a lot of optimism for this offense. A.D. Mitchell was supposed to be that guy. Like, and to me, I see a lot of struggle in this team. They couldn't beat a Green Bay Packers team without Jordan Love. And I think the bigger pressing issue is just the accuracy concerns with Anthony Richardson and the efficiency concerns as a quarterback. And typically I don't go there, but we're talking about a guy, Michael Pittman, who was a good candidate this year to at least be a wide receiver 2. He's almost tiered down to me in a wide receiver 3 land. And then you talk about Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, potentially Josh Downs when he gets back. A lot of inconsistency on the board. Which receiver can we trust? Will this offense be better? Talk to me about this Colts offense, man.
Yeah, so for me personally, like I was not in on Michael Pittman this year, and I wasn't in on Michael Pittman last year, and for these reasons, like Anthony Richardson is not, at least right now, he's not a good passer. He's not. He was not a good passer in college. And this was going to be a struggle for Michael Pittman because Michael Pittman is a low A dot, like he's a volume-based wide receiver. And he doesn't fit what Anthony Richardson truly wants to do. And Anthony Richardson is just chuck the ball down the field, big plays kind of guy. Right now, what you have, this is out of quarterbacks with at least 10 dropbacks on the season. Anthony Richardson, an adjusted completion percentage, 56%. By far the worst mark in the NFL. League average is 74%. Or I want to say 76%. So well below league average right now for Anthony Richardson in the completion department. And this is going to be a problem all season long. Well, I don't want to say all season long because the hope is that he matures. Like this is truly his rookie season and he matures as a passer and he's able to get a little bit better there. But it was kind of the problem heading into the season. And honestly, right now, what I would do is I would be selling, even though it's low. Like I would be getting out on Michael Pittman if I had the opportunity. Like I don't think he should have been drafted where he was being drafted just because of like Anthony Richardson and his play style. I think Anthony Richardson still has a long way to go, and hopefully we see some improvement as the season progresses. But like right now, there's no way you can trust Michael Pittman in your starting lineup. Like I'd feel better with DJ Moore for sure than Michael Pittman currently. So it's just a guy that I think would benefit on a more volume-based team, passing team, than unfortunately in Indianapolis Colts right now.
Yes, it's a tough sell right now. And I think for those who have Pittman or drafted him early with the hopes that he'd be like wide receiver 2, the saving grace, I think it's kind of a false saving grace, to be honest with you, is the targets, right? You see 8 targets, you see 7 targets. So he's had 15 targets in 2 games, which looks ideal, but it equates out to 30 yards in both games. And it's like, or 20 yards in one game. That's not like what you want to see. So I think, and another thing is that he doesn't have no touchdowns. Like at least if you were having that low of an output, you'd want to see some touchdowns, more red zone work. And it's just not there. I'm not calling him a drop. I'm not calling him even a bench, really. But if you have better options, I'm okay with tearing him down, benching him in your 10-team leagues and your 8-team leagues for sure. But in your 12-team leagues, if you have a more option with higher upside, now I'm considering that over Pittman until we see some form of life out of Anthony Richardson. And it could come as soon as this week. It could come within the next couple weeks. But we want to see it because you put in your lineups two weeks in a row. We know the targets are there, but we know Richardson loves to throw that ball downfield. And your A.D. Mitchells, your Alec Pierce, there's a reason Alec Pierce is proven to be the best receiver on his team so far. So kind of out on this offense right now. Jonathan Taylor's really the only piece that I want. And he's, going to probably be inconsistent throughout the year as well. A-Rich, of course, as well. I would want to have A-Rich on my team. He's still going to be a top 3 to 5 quarterback. But
absolutely. And real quick, and this is kind of just a point that we've a little bit been hammering, but this is catchable throw percentage. So basically throws that are catchable, deemed catchable. These are the bottom quarterbacks right now. Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson. And what's that tell us? These guys are young, right? Yeah. They're, once again, not everybody is CJ Stroud. And I feel like it kind of creates these false narratives with some people where it's well, CJ Stroud did it. This guy is technically a better prospect. He should be even better. So it doesn't always work like that. Not every situation is created equal. Not every single player is created equal. Some may be better at just getting up the speed faster than others. So I don't want to create panic. It's still too early to panic. It's only week 2, but there's some trends that are happening right now that aren't good trends that, yes, they're young players, but you hope turn around because it's really not good right now. And hopefully always hope things get better, but sometimes it doesn't get better.
Sometimes it doesn't. The saving grace of this is still week 2 or week 3. We're still very early in the year. We've only played 2 games, so there's a lot of football, a lot more storylines. And obviously, me and Tyler got you guys locked in on a weekly basis. So continue to watch the show, ask us questions in the comments. And for Tyler and I, we will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.